Welcome to our 5 on 5. Pleased to be joined today by Kate Ingram, a life coach and mentor. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So, holiday season, can be a difficult time for some. You've been through some pretty rough stuff in your past around the holidays. How did you overcome a season of sadness in your own life?
Well, I've had a couple of seasons of sadness, actually. I lost my father very suddenly and dramatically on Christmas Eve when I was 8 years old. So that really started my process, I guess you could say. And then in 1996, I was a newlywed, and my husband was an aerobatic pilot, and he was killed right here in Eagle Point in a plane crash on December 14th.
Wow.
And so I would say that event really blew open my experience of grief and started a very long process of exploring that and healing from it, honestly.
Yeah, that's two very different points in your life,
Yeah.
but two very traumatic, and especially around the
Yes.
holidays. How did you yourself, speaking just you personally, how
Yeah.
did you overcome that?
Yeah. Well, honestly, it was a long process, and I can only say that looking back on it. But what happened when my father died is that I really didn't grieve. I was terribly sad. My family was sad, but it was over a Christmas vacation. I just went right back to school and never really talked about it. There was no counseling. There was nothing
So
like
young.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. So I just went along, as people often do. I just went along doing the best I could. I wasn't really thinking about it too much until my husband was killed. And at that point, the grief was so intense, and I realized that I had all this grief from the loss of my father as well. And at that point, I really went into some very serious counseling and reading and spiritual study.
Wow, yeah, of course. So how have you taken those experiences, and how has that helped you help others as a life coach? And I guess before your husband's passing, you were a counselor.
That's right.
At the time.
Yes,
okay.
yes. I was trained as a counselor, got my master's degree in counseling psychology, and I had worked in San Francisco counseling adults and children prior to being widowed. But I would say that you're asking how I took all those events and worked it into my work now, and it's made an enormous impact because you really can't understand someone with deep empathy unless you've been through the experience yourself. Mm-hmm. And although everybody's grief is different kinds of losses, and people handle it differently, there are commonalities to grief that everybody has, and that's what really connects us. So I think the most powerful thing that came from my personal experiences that I use in my work now is that I have a comfort, with grief. It's not something that scares me.
Yeah, it doesn't lock you up.
It doesn't lock me up, that's right. And I have ease with it. And, our culture is the opposite of that. Our culture is very uncomfortable with grief. It doesn't know how to handle it. People don't know what to say or what to do. And which makes it all much more difficult for people who are going through it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break.
Yeah.
We'll have much more in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, we're here with Kate Ingram, a life coach and mentor. We're talking about grief counseling, and what advice do you have for people who are going through a tough time right now in the holidays?
I think the number one thing I would say to someone going through grief right now is just not to have high expectations of yourself, to not try to celebrate the holidays the way you normally have or even the way you'd like to, but just to allow yourself to be in this very special time. It's a very difficult time, and to be very gentle with yourself and not push, not try to make everything the way it's always been, and just to allow the process to be what it is.
Okay, and you mentioned before about some people don't know how to react when other people are grieving.
That's true.
What advice would you give for those other people in the room who aren't sure how to handle this?
I would say the number one thing is to say something. Just to let people know that you're aware, that you care about them. Mr. Rogers, one of my heroes, said he wanted to create, a space for caring in his show. And I think if we can show people that we care, that we're aware, that's really all they need. Okay. And not to ignore it and pretend it's not there.
Okay, and you're writing a book. Tell us about
It's
I'm
about writing,
grief.
It is. It's actually my second book. My first book was a memoir about the loss of my father and my husband. And this book is a guide to grief. And it will be coming out, I hope, next year.
Okay. Well, I'm obviously sorry for everything you had to go through, but it
Thank you.
certainly looks like you're doing some very positive things with it.
Thank you so
Great
much.
to meet you.
Great to meet you.
All right. Stay with us. We'll be right back.